In Mexico, more secrets have been revealed about the ancient city of Teotihuacan. Researchers have spent years digging beneath the surface.
For centuries, Teotihuacan stood as the greatest riddle of the ancient world, a colossal planned metropolis of massive pyramids, yet utterly anonymous. No kings, no written names, no history. The city's silence led to endless, baseless speculation.
When you have similar pyramid complexes, like the ones at Teotihuacan and the ones at Giza, you have to kind of think that, yeah, the same builders, the same designers are behind these giant complexes.
That ends now. After 2,000 years, archaeologists might have finally decoded Teotihuacan's secret writing. Using a reconstructed ancestral language, researchers have cracked the glyphs hidden in the city's murals, revealing something definitive that forces us to rewrite the fundamental history of central Mexico. The silent superpower has begun to speak, and its first words are a shock. The language of lineage. The deepest mystery of Teotihuacan has always been identity. Who were these people? Imagine finding an abandoned modern city with no records, no street signs, no documents, no public history. That was the puzzle of Teotihuacan. Archaeologists searched for decades, guessing the builders might be the Toltecs, the Olmecs, or an unknown group. The only persistent clues were found in the city's stunning, vibrant murals. The walls were covered in symbols, feathered serpents, jaguars, priests, and geometric shapes. For many years, scholars saw these symbols as complex art, not writing, but a centralized, complex urban life requires a way to keep records. Researchers, including Magnus Pharaoh Hansen and Christopher Helmke, believed these symbols were a functional writing system, just very hard to read. No one before us has used a language that fits the time period to decipher this written language. Nor has anyone been able to prove that certain logograms had a phonetic value that could be used in contexts other than the logogram's main meaning, said Hansen. The images were not just pictures, they were code. So what was the first real breakthrough? It came with a decisive shift in thinking, the moment the rebus principle finally made the symbols speak. To understand this, think about how the rebus principle works. If you need to write an abstract word, you use the image of a physical object to stand for its sound. Teotihuacan's glyphs were not simple pictures. They fused logograms, where an image like the maguey plant carried a full word, with phonetic signs that encoded sound, turning art into language. The critical error that stopped translation efforts for years was using the wrong dictionary. Scholars tried classical Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, but it was spoken centuries later, and the sound patterns had shifted too much. The moment researchers reconstructed the older, ancestral version of the language, the first clear signs of meaning appeared. They found specific logograms and rebus components that spelled out names and titles consistent with the Uto-Aztecan sound system. It was a partial, but definitive fit. The language used by the people of Teotihuacan was directly related to the language that would eventually become Nahuatl. This single fact immediately changed the entire narrative. The anonymous builders of this colossal city were speaking the foundational language of the Aztecs. The broader implications are still to come. For now, one truth stands. The silent city was never mute. Its language was early Nahuatl. But how does a city that rivaled Rome, reshaped rivers, and mastered earthquakes leave behind no name, no rulers, and no written history? The unprecedented scale of the silent city. Here's the thing, Teotihuacan's scale is the key to its significance. A city this vast could not exist without identity. Right now, let's place ourselves in the world of 500 CE. While Europe was in its dark ages, Teotihuacan was the reigning metropolis. At its peak, the city was the 6th largest in the world, with over 125,000 residents, rivaling ancient Rome. The city was not built slowly, it was executed all at once, following an uncompromising master plan. Every major building, apartment complex, and street was aligned along a precise, extensive grid system. This level of city planning was centuries ahead of its time in the Americas. The structures themselves survive because of clever engineering. The Pyramid of the Sun has a base nearly the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was built using the distinctive talud tablero technique, sloped bases supporting vertical panels. This method provided exceptional earthquake resistance, crucial in this seismic region, and explains why the structures still stand after 2 millennia. Now, consider the practical infrastructure. Beneath the grand plazas, archaeologists found an intricate, subterranean system of aqueducts and drainage channels. This system controlled water flow across 20 square kilometers. Their planning was so comprehensive that they even diverted the massive San Juan River to flow exactly where their urban blueprint demanded. A civilization capable of this massive, centralized construction must have had an advanced system of administration. They managed labor, materials, and long-term construction. They needed a way to write down titles, taxes, and history. Yet, for 1,000 years, we only had the silent stone. The lack of visible, dynastic writing on monuments was the final lock on the mystery. The new linguistic evidence suggests the information wasn't missing. It was simply recorded in a far more subtle, painted form, breaking the code. The enduring failure to decipher the Teotihuacan glyphs stemmed from one incorrect assumption, that the language must be easy to understand using the language of their later neighbors. Researchers initially tried to use classical Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, to interpret the glyphs' sounds. This was a 1,000-year chronological jump. As archaeologist Christopher Helmke pointed out, using a modern language to read ancient texts is like reading medieval English using only modern slang. Otherwise, it would be a bit like trying to decipher the runes on the famous Danish runestones, such as the Jelling Stone, using modern Danish. You have to try to read the text using a language that is closer in time and contemporary. The language had changed too much for systematic translation. This linguistic gap was the wall that stopped all previous attempts. This is why the October 2025 breakthrough was so successful, the reconstruction of Proto-Nahuatl. Hansen and Helmke performed a detailed linguistic analysis. They studied the differences between modern Nahuatl and its closest surviving Uto-Aztecan relatives, such as Cora and Huichol. By comparing the vocabulary and sound patterns across these languages, they could backtrack and reconstruct the phonetic structure of Proto-Nahuatl, the language spoken in the Valley of Mexico around 200 CE. This approach means they successfully built the ancient dictionary that should have existed. This reconstructed Proto-Nahuatl was then applied to the rebus glyphs, where a picture represented a specific sound. The system finally became cohesive. They confirmed that certain logograms, like the sign for a maguey plant or symbols for stone and a headdress, had phonetic values that worked consistently across many artifacts. This breakthrough established a functional writing system that revealed personal names, official titles, and specific ritual references. The decoding confirmed that the city's writing system was not foreign, but belonged to the same linguistic family that the Aztecs would inherit centuries later. This achievement breaks the linguistic barrier, allowing researchers to move past the city's imposing silence and begin the process of building a comprehensive ancient vocabulary. The Aztec time paradox, an ancestral home. Their successful decoding immediately solves the identity mystery and forces a major change to the history of central Mexico. It establishes a profound, deep connection between the civilizations. The previous historical view often described the Aztecs as late arrivals. They were seen as nomadic migrants who settled in the Valley of Mexico after the decline of Teotihuacan. The narrative saw them as outsiders who built their empire on the ruins left by others. The new data fundamentally changes this. It confirms that the dominant language spoken by the people who built Teotihuacan belonged to the Uto-Aztecan family. The Aztecs, using the Nahuatl name Teotihuacan, the place where gods were created, and making pilgrimages to the ruins, were, in fact, honoring the forgotten capital of their own linguistic ancestors. Consider the timeline difference. Teotihuacan was founded around 100 BCE and collapsed around 550 CE. The Aztecs began building their capital, Tenochtitlan, nearly 800 years later, around 1325 CE. This long gap made the idea of a direct link seem complicated, yet the reverence remained. Their traditional beliefs were linguistically and historically accurate. They were not simply borrowing power, they were claiming a legacy that was inherently theirs. This discovery significantly pushes back the established timeline of the Uto-Aztecan language in central Mexico, suggesting its roots are not migrant, but native to the valley, going back to millennia. The story is no longer about one culture replacing another, but about linguistic evolution and survival through a period of great political and environmental chaos. But understanding who they were, the ancestors of the Aztecs, makes the question of how they chose to end their city even more dramatic. The revolting end of the God's city. History often records an empire's collapse through invasion or natural decline. Teotihuacan chose a third path. Around 550 CE, the city did not fade. It was systematically and deliberately destroyed from within. Archaeological evidence provides a clear picture of an internal revolution. Let's have a look at the specific evidence of the destruction. Excavations show that the fires that consumed the city were precisely targeted. They were concentrated in the elite areas, the palaces, the administrative centers along the Avenue of the Dead, and the temples associated with the ruling class. Importantly, the common apartment compounds were largely spared the worst of the burning. This distinct pattern points clearly to an uprising aimed specifically at the symbols and seats of power. The motive for this extreme action lies in a devastating failure of the elite. Science shows that around 535 CE, a major tropical volcanic eruption triggered a period of significant global climate cooling. This led to widespread crop failures and famine across Mesoamerica. The rulers of Teotihuacan based their authority on a crucial promise. Their divine connection guaranteed prosperity and abundance. When the harvests failed year after year, that promise was shattered. The elite class lost its religious and political legitimacy. The resulting action was both destructive and highly organized. The populace burned the palaces and smashed the statues of the rulers. What followed was extraordinary, a massive, coordinated migration. Up to 80% of the population left. They did not scatter as desperate refugees. They migrated in organized groups to other centers in Mesoamerica, carrying their knowledge and language with them. Beyond the fires, the Teotihuacanos left behind one of the most enigmatic clues about their spiritual world. Sealed deep beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, this strange feature shows the extreme commitment they had to their profound, ancient beliefs. The lasting trace of mercury. In 2015, archaeologists exploring a sealed tunnel deep beneath the temple discovered large quantities of liquid mercury. This was a significant volume of the toxic, highly reflective metal pooled in chambers that had been closed off for 1,800 years. The use of mercury presents a significant puzzle. First, the cost was immense. Mercury is rare locally. It requires mining, refining, and transporting a dangerous substance over hundreds of miles. Second, the intent was spiritual. The liquid metal was not structural. The most credible theory suggests the mercury was meant to be a potent symbolic element. Its brilliant, mirror-like surface, especially when viewed by ritual light, may have represented the mythical rivers or lakes of the underworld. It was a barrier or a mirror into the divine. The Teotihuacanos sealed this expensive, toxic substance in their most sacred subterranean space. It remained liquid and volatile for 2 millennia. This act is a powerful testament to the uncompromising nature of their spiritual vision. They were willing to invest incredible resources and risk exposure to a toxic material to achieve a perfect, enduring spiritual boundary. The mercury speaks to their devotion. The deciphered glyphs speak to their administrative identity. Together, these clues provide a comprehensive and complex portrait of a highly organized, deeply devout, and ultimately revolutionary society. But the October 2025 discovery sent shockwaves that are still unfolding. The first words of the ancestors. The work of Pharaoh Hansen and Helmke has shifted Teotihuacan from an enigma to the clear, foundational source of the Aztec lineage. After 2,000 years, archaeologists might have finally decoded Teotihuacan's secret writing. The structural code, Proto-Nahuatl applied via the rebus principle, is now the definitive standard for all future research. We have created a method that can serve as a baseline for others to build on in order to expand their understanding of the texts, said Hansen. The immediate goal for archaeologists is to move beyond mere titles and logograms to the translation of full sentences and, potentially, historical narrative. Every surviving fragment of pottery, every mural section, is now a potential key to understanding their daily lives and political events. The discovery provides undeniable proof of a deep linguistic and cultural connection in central Mexico. The Aztecs revered the ruins because they were, indeed, their ancestral home. The journey to fully understand the story hidden beneath those majestic, silent pyramids has just begun now that the city's ancient voice has been meticulously reconstructed. The revelation that the secret writing of Teotihuacan is an early form of Nahuatl, linking its builders directly to the Aztecs' ancestors, finally solves a 2 millennia-old mystery. Now that we know their identity, the focus shifts to their destruction. Did the systemic burning of the palaces and the sealed mercury pools represent a desperate final act against climate collapse, or a calculated, enduring spiritual statement against a failed elite? Share your perspective on the Teotihuacanos revolutionary choice in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.